Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to kick off today's presentation on subject-verb agreement. This is a fundamental topic that will help you improve your grammar and writing skills. We'll explore the key rules, common mistakes, and tips for mastering agreement in sentences. So, let's get started and make this an engaging learning experience. Let's take a closer look at the rules on subject-verb agreement, starting with the basic rule. This is fundamental because it helps ensure that our sentences are grammatically correct and clear. The basic rule is straightforward. The subject and the verb must agree in number. That means if the subject is singular, the verb should be singular as well, and if the subject is plural, the verb should be plural. For example, if I say the dog runs, dog is singular, so runs is correct. But if I say the dogs run, dogs is plural, so run is the right choice. Understanding this simple rule forms the foundation for mastering more complex subject-verb agreement rules later on. It's a key concept that supports the overall clarity and professionalism of your writing and speaking. Let's take a moment to focus on the basic rule. This is fundamental because it sets the foundation for everything else we'll discuss. The key idea here is to understand the core principle that guides our approach. Think of it as the main compass that keeps us aligned with our goals. When we follow this rule, it ensures consistency and clarity in our work. It's important to grasp this concept thoroughly because it influences all subsequent steps and decisions. So, as we move forward, keep in mind that mastering this basic rule is crucial for success. It's the starting point that connects everything else in our overall strategy. Now, let's talk about the basic rule for subject-verb agreement. The key point here is that singular subjects must have singular verbs, and plural subjects take plural verbs. This might sound simple, but it's fundamental to making your sentences clear and grammatically correct. For example, if you say the dog runs, dog is singular, so we use runs, which is also singular. On the other hand, if you say the dogs run, then dogs is plural, so we use run, the plural form. Understanding this rule helps you avoid common mistakes and keeps your writing professional. This rule ties into the overall theme of clarity and precision in communication, which is essential in effective writing and speaking. Let's take a closer look at rules on subject-verb agreement. This is a fundamental aspect of clear and correct English, so understanding these rules will really help improve your writing and speaking skills. First, remember that the subject and the verb in a sentence need to agree in number. That means if your subject is singular, your verb should be singular as well, and the same goes for plural subjects. For example, if you say the dog runs, dog is singular, so runs is the correct singular verb. Conversely, if you say the dogs run, dogs is plural, so run fits better. Another key point is paying attention to tricky subjects, like collective nouns or indefinite pronouns. For instance, words like team or group are usually singular, so they take singular verbs, but sometimes they can be plural depending on context. Similarly, indefinite pronouns like everyone, someone, or each are typically singular and require singular verbs. It's also important to watch out for compound subjects joined by and, which usually take a plural verb, like Tom and Jerry are friends. But if two singular subjects are connected by or nor, the verb agrees with the subject closest to it. For example, either the teacher or the students are responsible. Overall, mastering these rules helps ensure your sentences are grammatically correct and your message is clear. It's a key part of the overall theme of effective communication, so paying attention to subject-verb agreement is essential in becoming a confident writer and speaker. Let's look at some simple sentences to understand how the pronoun you works in different contexts. First, consider the sentence, "You sing so well." Here, you is the subject, and when we use you, it always takes a base form of the verb like sing. Next, in you are asked to clean the room. You is still the subject, but notice the verb form changes to are asked, which is the passive voice. Finally, in you were invited to come. You remains the subject, and the verb is were invited, showing past tense in the passive voice. A key point to remember is that you always takes a plural verb form, regardless of whether we're talking to one person or many. This consistency helps keep our sentences clear and grammatically correct. Connecting this to the overall theme, understanding how you functions in different sentence structures is essential for effective communication. There is a huge gap between the rich and the poor, and this disparity affects many aspects of our lives, including access to resources and technology. Today, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about something practical: how to preserve meat. Proper preservation is essential to ensure food safety, reduce waste, and make sure our meat stays fresh longer. Here are some common methods for preserving meat, each with its own advantages depending on the situation. When discussing these methods, it's important to remember that the choice of technique can depend on factors like available tools, climate, and cultural practices. For example, if a sentence begins with here or there, the verb agrees with the subject that follows. This is a little grammar tip that can help you communicate more clearly when explaining these concepts. So, whether you're curing, freezing, or drying meat, understanding the right methods can make a big difference in maintaining quality and safety. Overall, these preservation techniques connect to broader themes of sustainability and resource management, which are vital in addressing societal inequalities and ensuring everyone has access to safe, nutritious food. Let's look at some example sentences to understand how to handle subjects connected by either or neither nor. In these cases, the key point is that the verb must agree with the subject that's closest to the verb. For instance, in the first sentence, either the conductor or the singers are attending the concert. Since singers is plural and is closer to the verb, we use are. Conversely, in the second example, neither the players nor the coach is joining. Here, coach is singular and is closer to the verb, so we use is. Remember, this rule helps ensure subject-verb agreement even when multiple subjects are involved. Understanding this will help you speak more confidently and write more accurately in English. Sure, here's the word-by-word narrative script for slide 9. Today, I want to highlight some interesting examples that illustrate how subject-verb agreement works when we have phrases like as well as or accompanied by in a sentence. For instance, when we say Daddy as well as my brothers is enjoying the party, the main subject here is Daddy. Even though my brothers is included in the sentence, it doesn't change the fact that the subject is singular. So we use a singular verb, which is. Similarly, in the next example, Jake, accompanied by his sisters, is enrolling in PCC. The core subject is Jake, which is singular. The phrase, accompanied by his sisters, adds additional information, but it doesn't affect the agreement. We still use is because the main subject remains singular. The key point here is that when a singular subject is followed by phrases like as well as or accompanied by, we still treat the main subject as singular. This concept is important because it helps ensure our sentences are grammatically correct, especially in more complex structures. Understanding these nuances is essential as they connect to our overall theme of mastering subject-verb agreement, which is fundamental to clear and accurate communication. Now, in this slide, I want to highlight a couple of important points about subject-verb agreement. First, I mentioned that my teacher and friend is here. Notice that when we have two subjects joined by and, we typically use a plural verb. So even though my teacher and friend might seem like one unit, it's actually two people, so we say are here instead of is here. Next, I have an example with Larry and Mercy. They are reading novels. This again shows that when two subjects are connected by and, we use a plural verb, which in this case is are reading. The key concept to remember is that singular subjects joined by and require a plural verb, unless they refer to one idea or thing. This is a common source of confusion, but understanding this rule helps ensure our sentences are grammatically correct. Throughout the presentation, I want you to see how these rules apply in real examples, making your writing and speaking clearer and more accurate. Today, let's look at some important rules about subject-verb agreement when using either or neither nor. For example, you'll notice in the sentences, neither Ferdy nor Dulce is waiting for you. and either mommy or daddy is coming with me at the outbound. The key point here is that when you have two singular subjects joined by either or neither nor, the verb that follows should be singular as well. This is a common mistake, so it's good to remember that the verb agrees with the subject closest to it. In these examples, since both subjects are singular, we use is, not are. This rule helps keep our sentences clear and grammatically correct, especially when talking about choices or negations involving two subjects. So, whenever you're constructing sentences with either or neither nor, check that your verb matches the closest subject in number, singular in this case. All right, let's look at this slide. We see that one of the members is against the rule. This highlights how individual opinions can sometimes conflict with group guidelines. It's important to recognize that even within a team, there can be disagreements, and understanding how to handle those is crucial. Next, we have the example of one of the boys yelling so loud. This shows how actions, like raising one's voice, can impact group dynamics and communication. Now, the key grammatical point here is about subject-verb agreement. Specifically, if a singular subject is followed by a phrase containing a plural noun, the verb remains singular. This might seem a bit tricky at first, but it's essential for clarity and correctness in our writing and speech. Throughout our presentation, I want to emphasize that understanding these rules helps us communicate more effectively, especially when dealing with complex sentences or diverse opinions in a group setting. So, remember, paying attention to the subject and its modifiers ensures our messages are clear and grammatically correct. Several are seeking justice today. It's clear that many individuals are asking for fairness and accountability in various situations. Both were asking to be freed, which highlights how people often fight for their rights or liberation. It's important to note that the words we use, like several, few, both, many, and others, are always plural. This reflects the idea that justice is a collective effort, involving groups rather than just individuals. These examples reinforce the importance of understanding pronouns and their proper usage, especially when discussing groups of people. Overall, this slide reminds us that justice involves many, and our language helps us communicate the collective nature of these efforts. Now let's look at some examples to understand how these pronouns work in sentences. For instance, when I say some of the ice cream is left, notice that some refers to a part of the ice cream, and since we're talking about a part of a whole, the verb is singular. Similarly, in the sentence, some of the girls were absent. Some refers to a part of the girls, which is a plural group, so we use the plural verb were. This highlights an important point. These indefinite pronouns like some, most, all, none can be either singular or plural depending on what they refer to in the sentence. If they refer to a singular noun or a singular part of a whole, we use a singular verb. If they refer to a plural noun or group, we switch to a plural verb. Understanding this helps us make our sentences grammatically correct and clear. Remember, the key is to look at what the pronoun is referring to and choose the verb form that matches. This is essential for maintaining consistency and clarity in our communication, especially when we're talking about quantities or groups. When I look around this room, I see that every man and woman here is a member. This might seem simple, but it's actually a powerful reminder of how inclusive and unified our community is. The key point to understand is that the word every in this context emphasizes totality, each and every individual without exception. It's important to recognize that when we talk about membership or belonging, it's not just about some people, but about all of us together. This phrase underscores the importance of individual participation within the larger group. Connecting this to our overall theme, it highlights the strength we gain when everyone is involved. Each person's contribution matters, and together we form a complete, cohesive team. So remember, every man and woman in this hall is a member, each one vital to our collective success. Let's look at some important points here. First, $1 million was given back to the owner. This shows how significant the amount is, and it's a good example of how we refer to large sums of money in a singular way, even though dollars is plural. Next, we see that 2 years is a long time to wait. Notice how even though years is plural, when we talk about a specific period like 2 years, we treat it as singular in this context. Now, on this slide, we're also highlighting some common examples involving expressions of time, money, weight, and distance. The key takeaway is that these expressions are considered singular, even if their nouns are plural. This is an important point to remember when constructing sentences or analyzing sentences involving these kinds of measurements. Understanding these nuances helps us communicate more clearly and correctly, especially in formal or written English. It connects to the overall theme of mastering proper grammatical structures in different contexts. Today, I want to highlight how we talk about amounts of money when they involve multiple units. For example, we added 6,100 peso bills to the budget. Notice that because we're referring to more than one bill, we use the plural form of the verb. Similarly, we found 5 25-centavo coins. Again, since we're talking about multiple coins, the verb is plural. The key point here is that when the amount refers to separate units, like bills or coins, you need to make sure your verb agrees in number. So, if you're talking about one bill, you'd say a bill, but if you're talking about many, you say bills. The same rule applies for coins and other items. This concept ties back to our overall theme of accurately expressing quantities in Filipino, especially when it comes to money. It's important to remember these small but crucial grammar rules to communicate clearly and correctly. On this slide, I want to draw your attention to 2 key points. First, notice that we say the pair of scissors was placed on the table. Here, because we're referring to a pair, the verb is singular, even though scissors is plural in form. It's important to remember that when we talk about a pair, like scissors, pants, or tongs, the noun takes a singular verb. Second, look at the second sentence. The pants are torn into 2. In this case, pants is naturally plural, so we use the plural verb are. This highlights how some words, like pants or scissors, are always plural unless preceded by pair, which then makes the whole phrase singular. Understanding this distinction is crucial because it helps us use the correct grammar, especially when describing objects that come in pairs. This connects to the overall theme of proper language use and clarity in communication. The latest news is alarming to the public, and it's understandable why people might feel worried or anxious about it. When we hear such news, it's important to stay informed, but also to keep a clear perspective. Switching gears a bit, I want to share something personal. Mathematics is my favorite subject. I find it fascinating because it helps us understand the world in a very logical and precise way. Whether it's solving a problem or understanding patterns, math sharpens our critical thinking skills. Now, I'd like to highlight an interesting point about language, especially when dealing with nouns. Some nouns, even though they look plural, actually refer to a single thing or concept. These nouns are singular in meaning, so they take singular verbs. It's a small detail, but it's really important for precise communication, especially in writing and formal contexts. So, as we continue, keep in mind how language nuances like this can help us express ideas more clearly, just as understanding complex news or mathematical concepts helps us make sense of the world around us. The number of students outside is not recorded yet, so we don't have an exact count at this moment. However, we do know that a number of students are waiting outside, which indicates there are quite a few students still in the queue. Now, an interesting point to remember here is how we refer to these groups. For example, when we say a number of students, we use a plural verb because a number of is considered plural. Conversely, if we were talking about the number of students, that would be singular, and we'd use a singular verb. Understanding this distinction is important because it helps us communicate clearly and accurately about quantities and groups. In the context of our overall theme, efficiency and clarity in managing student flow, knowing whether we're talking about a number of students or the number of students can influence how we interpret and respond to the situation. So, even though we don't have the exact count right now, recognizing these grammatical nuances can help us better understand and describe the current scenario. Let's take a closer look at these examples to understand how to match verbs with fractions. When we say, 1/4 of the employees were attending the seminar, notice that the verb were agrees with the plural noun employees. Since employees is plural, we use were. Similarly, in the second example, 1/2 of the cake was consumed. The noun cake is singular, so we use was. The key point here is that the verb should agree with the object of the of phrase. If it's plural, we use a plural verb. If it's singular, we use a singular verb. This consistency helps ensure clarity and grammatical correctness in our sentences. Remembering this rule will help you communicate more effectively, especially when discussing portions or fractions in both writing and speech. The gymnastics performed in the field today were truly outstanding. They showcased incredible skill, precision, and artistry. Gymnastics, as many of you know, is particularly popular among girls, drawing widespread enthusiasm and participation. It's interesting to note that some nouns like athletics, genetics, politics, gymnastics, and statistics can be a bit tricky because their meaning can change depending on how they're used. When these words refer to an organized activity, like a sport or a field of study, they are usually treated as singular. But if we're talking about the various activities within that group or different individuals' actions, then they tend to be plural. So, understanding this distinction is important, especially when you're describing or writing about these topics. It helps ensure your sentences are grammatically correct and clear. Overall, recognizing how these nouns function can deepen our appreciation of the activities and the fields they represent. And in this case, it highlights how gymnastics is not just a sport, but a well-organized activity that captures the imagination of many, especially young girls. Philippines is a wondrous place. When I think of the Philippines, I picture its stunning landscapes, vibrant culture, and warm, welcoming people. It's truly a country full of surprises and natural beauty. Now, moving over to the Bahamas, we see that it has beautiful beaches. The Bahamas is famous for its crystal-clear waters and soft, white sand beaches that attract tourists from all over the world. Both examples highlight how the names of countries are always regarded as singular. So, when we talk about the Philippines or the Bahamas, we treat the country as a single entity. This is an important point because it influences how we use verbs and pronouns when referring to these places. Understanding this helps us communicate more clearly and correctly in English. And of course, it ties back to the overall theme of making sure we get our language right when talking about different countries. The efficient are what this country needs. When we talk about efficiency, we're focusing on the importance of productivity and effective use of resources. It's crucial because a country that operates efficiently can better meet the needs of its people and sustain growth. On the other hand, the poor are to be helped. This highlights our responsibility to support those who are struggling, ensuring that everyone has a fair chance to succeed. Now, a quick note on language. Adjectives used as nouns, like the efficient or the poor, are considered plural. This might seem a bit tricky at first, but it emphasizes groups rather than individuals. It's a way of talking about these categories collectively, which is important when shaping policies or societal perspectives. Overall, this slide ties into our broader theme of social and economic development, highlighting the need to focus on efficiency for growth, while also ensuring we support those in need. Balancing these priorities is key to building a fair and prosperous society. So, when we look at how the committee is described, it's interesting to see that it can be understood in different ways depending on the context. If we say, the committee are of different opinion, we're emphasizing that the individual members are acting independently, each holding their own view. This highlights their personal perspectives and independence of thought. On the other hand, if we say, the committee is against the plan, we're treating the committee as a single unit or entity. This means they're acting collectively, taking a unified stance as one body. This distinction is important because it shows how collective nouns like company, group, committee, crowd, jury, flock, and team can be either singular or plural. It depends on whether we're focusing on what the members are doing individually or their actions as a whole. Understanding this helps us communicate more clearly and accurately, especially in formal writing or speech, and ties back to the overall theme of how language reflects meaning and structure. Let's look at some simple examples to understand how numbers work together in basic math. When we say 5 minus 2, the answer is 3. This shows how subtraction helps us find what's left after taking some away. Next, if we multiply 5 by 2, we get 10. Multiplication is a quick way to add the same number several times. So 5 times 2 is the same as saying 5 plus 5, which equals 10. Now let's consider 7 and 3. When we combine them, they make 10. This is a good example of how different numbers can sum up to the same total. Similarly, when we add 7 plus 3, the result is 10 again. This highlights the consistency in how numbers relate to each other in addition. Finally, I want to point out the importance of understanding these basic operations because they form the foundation for working with more complex mathematical expressions. Recognizing these relationships helps us see the bigger picture in math. Great Expectations is a must-read novel that has captivated readers for generations. It's a classic that offers deep insights into human nature and the complexities of personal growth. On the other hand, In Dreams Begin Responsibilities is a story by D. Schwartz, which explores the responsibilities that come with our dreams and aspirations. Now, a key point to remember is that titles of books, plays, articles, movies, and similar works are regarded as singular entities, even if their titles contain plural words. For example, even if a title has multiple words or plural nouns, we treat the entire title as a single, unified work. Connecting this to our overall theme, understanding how we reference and interpret titles helps us appreciate the importance of recognizing the unique identity of each work. It's a small detail, but it's crucial in clear communication and literary discussion. Today, I want to share some exciting news about Lopez and Sons. They are holding their annual meeting, which will span over 2 days. This kind of event shows their commitment to growth and staying connected as a team. It's important to note that Lopez and Sons is a successful organization. When we refer to the organization as a whole, we use a singular verb, so is correct here. This success reflects their dedication, strategic planning, and strong leadership. In this context, the organization's success isn't just about the numbers. It's about the people, the teamwork, and the shared vision that drives them forward. Holding a 2-day meeting allows everyone to engage deeply, share ideas, and plan for the future together. Overall, this meeting underscores the importance of continuous communication and collaboration within Lopez and Sons, reinforcing their position as a leader in their industry. It is us who must take care of the environment. This is a key message, reminding us that personal responsibility plays a crucial role in protecting our planet. But it's not just individuals, it's also the schools that must assume the responsibility. Schools are important because they shape the next generation and can instill sustainable habits early on. Now, let's look at some helpful language tips. For example, if a sentence begins with the word it, which is often an expletive, the verb that follows is always singular. Even if the subject that comes after it is plural, the verb remains singular. This is a common grammatical rule that helps us communicate clearly and correctly. So, in summary, the message emphasizes personal and institutional responsibility, and we also learn a useful grammar tip to improve our language skills. All of these points connect back to the overall theme of fostering awareness and responsibility, both in our actions and in how we communicate about the environment. Let's quickly look at the references that support the content we've discussed today. These sources provide the foundation for the key points and validate the information we've shared. It's important to recognize how research and credible sources underpin our understanding and help us make informed decisions. By referencing reputable studies and data, we ensure that our conclusions are grounded in solid evidence. This connection to the broader body of work also highlights the ongoing nature of learning and improvement in this field. As we wrap up, remember that these references are a valuable resource for further exploration and deepen your understanding of the topics we've covered. Let's take a quick look at the progression of our English courses. We started with Communication Arts 1, which laid the foundation for effective communication skills. Then, we moved on to Essentials of English, building on that foundation to deepen our understanding of language structure and usage. Finally, we completed the full course in College English, which integrates these skills into more advanced and comprehensive language mastery. This sequence highlights how each step prepares us for the next, ultimately equipping us with the essential tools for proficient English communication. Remember, these courses are designed to develop your skills gradually, making you more confident and effective in both academic and everyday contexts.